today. UFC 314 is upon us, where in the main event, Alexander Volkanovski steps in the octagon with Diego Lopes for the featherweight championship of the world. Also, what about the co-main event, where Iron Michael Chandler will step in the octagon with Paddy Pimblett? Plus, MMA YouTube is back. We finally got something to talk about, and we back. All of this and more on today's episode of Matter of Fact MMA. What's up? What's happening? Let's go. What's up, guys? We right back at it. We right back with it. It's your boy, Matt, and we are here to kick off UFC 314 Fight Week. UFC 314 Content Creator Week, because finally those of us that do MMA YouTube got something to talk about that's not a failed main event, a boring main event, or just a dumpster fire of a card. Finally, we've got something to talk about. Finally, we got something to dig deep into, if you will. Pause. And we couldn't be more excited. You know what I'm talking about? We could not be more excited. Yeah, last weekend, Lerone Murphy went out there. He defeated Josh Emmett. There you go. That's what happened. Hope you tuned in. I did. There's no need to talk about it. Shout out to Lerone Murphy. He's still undefeated. Now, let's get into UFC 314 that goes down this Saturday in Miami, Florida. MIA, Florida. In which, let's start out, all we going to talk about just for this video is the main event and the co-main event. Let's get into the main event, which we will see Alexander Volkanovski. Some believe the GOAT of featherweight. Not my GOAT, because my GOAT is Jose Aldo. But nevertheless, some believe the GOAT of featherweight makes his return in an attempt to regain his championship against newcomer Diego Lopes. I saw an interesting stat, and I don't have the exact number, but it's in the 700s. It's like 700 and something days since Diego Lopes made his debut in the UFC, and now he's getting a title shot. Very, very, very interesting. So let's get off into it. So, the real question here is, can Alexander Volkanovski regain his form and collect his championship one more time? Now, I know if you follow Alexander Volkanovski, if you've seen his training videos, if you've seen any photos of him at all, he's in tremendous shape right now. There's no doubt about it. He's in tremendous shape. Okay? And he's saying all the right things. His preparation looks like he's doing all the right things to go out there and become champion again. And you see Diego Lopes. And Diego Lopes is also doing all the right things. And he's saying all the right things, what you can get him to speak about, to gain his first championship. And this is what I find to be interesting in this fight. Alexander Volkanovski has hit a major level in his career, okay? He is the man in Australia and New Zealand. He's a bona fide star. He just inked some deal with The Rock. I don't know what that deal is about. I don't know what he's advertising for The Rock. I don't know if he's advertising the Brahma Bull shoes. I don't know if he works with Under Armour. I don't know if he's going to be in a Rock movie. I don't know what he's doing, but I know he's working with The Rock. You know what I'm saying? I know he's getting a lot of advertising in his home country. Like I said, he is a bona fide star now. And he recently said in an interview that he's making more money, he has more fame than he ever had while he was champion in his career. This is what I would say. Folks, let's not be fooled by a fighter coming into a fight in tremendous shape. Let's not be fooled by a former champion coming into a rematch. Or I'm sorry, not a rematch, but coming into a new title fight, trying to regain his title. That's in extremely good shape. We've seen this time and time again. You know, you can go way back. Rich Franklin. Yeah, I'm mentioning Rich Franklin was in tremendous shape in his rematch against Anderson Silva. Okay? Came in some of the best shape we had seen him in back during that time period. It didn't fare well for him. Ronda Rousey. Yeah, I pulled out Ronda Rousey. Came in some of the best shape. It was the best shape we had ever seen Ronda Rousey in when she came in to fight Amanda Nunes to try to regain her championship. Did not fare well. Israel Adesanya came in tremendous shape in his fight with Dricus du Plessis, Steel Knox. Tremendous shape Izzy was in. It did not fare well for him trying to regain his championship. And as I look at Alexander Volkanovski, I know he's coming in some of the best shape we've ever seen him in, but you also have to factor in Volkanovski will be 36 later on this year, I believe in September. 36 in the featherweight division. So, okay. You know, okay, maybe he can beat the odds as far as age-wise. Maybe his body looks like it's in the best shape. And it's coming in peak condition, peak cardio condition, peak strength condition. And it looks like it's ready, right? He's making more money than he's ever made in his career. That's great. You know, his family's taken care of. I believe he just bought a vineyard. You know what I'm saying? The homie, I believe the homie owns a vineyard now. You know what I'm saying? That's paper. Look, anytime you purchase a vineyard, that's paper. That ain't regular money. You know what I'm saying? But with that being said, and you know, with your deals with The Rock, with all of your fame that you're experiencing and everything, at the end of the day, how much of a distraction, how much of your time did that take away for your preparation for Diego Lopes? How much of your time did that take away? You know what I'm saying? Because it does take time. Running a business is difficult. Even if you're paying somebody else to run it for you, you still need to drop in every now and then and check on that person. Inking these deals, it takes a little bit out of you. To go here, to fly there, you know, it takes a lot. There's a lot of calls, whether you're doing them on Zoom or not. There's a lot going on. And granted, you may come in the perfect body weight and shape, but that just shows that you've been in the gym hard. That's not quite the same as training as you might have trained in your younger years when you were hungry. Okay? There is no hunger by any champion of any sport, whether it's basketball, football, baseball, fighting, MMA, boxing. There is no hunger that you will ever be able to replicate or experience like the hunger that you had on the way to your first championship. You know, anybody that's ever made a bag in their life, you know what I'm saying, made some money, that first bag hits different. The struggling, the striving, the blood, sweat, and tears that you shed to get the first major bag, you can never duplicate that with the bags that you'll receive after that. Same way with championships. So this version of Alexander Volkanovski is never going to be as hungry as the Volk that went out there and defeated Max the first time for the championship. He's never going to be able to duplicate that. No matter how much money he pours into his training camp, no matter who he brings in to help train him, he can fly in all the best training partners in the world. He can fly in other champions from other weight classes, former champions from his weight class. But he'll never be able to duplicate the hunger that he had going into his first championship fight. It just can't be done by any champion of any sport. Now, when you talk about Diego Lopes did something interesting for this training camp because he went full dark mode. He blacked out everything. He wasn't out meeting or doing Zoom calls with The Rock or The Rock's people. He's not worried about being famous in Brazil. And currently, I believe he resides and trains most of the time in Mexico. He's not really, that's not where he's at. He has no championships, and he's still a relative newcomer in the UFC, and he's fighting for his first championship. There's no hunger that Alexander Volkanovski can duplicate, replicate, that will match the hunger that right now Diego Lopes has in trying to win his first championship in the UFC. Alexander Volkanovski could empty out his refrigerator. He could lock himself in a storage shed for 2 or 3 months and only drink a sip of water every day. And that will still not duplicate the hunger that he had going into fighting for his first championship. So you can look at all the photos you want and everything of Alexander Volkanovski, and you can say, man, this guy's in the best shape of his life. But it still won't match. It still won't match what he had, what he possessed, which was the drive, the hunger, the need to prove the world, to prove to the world that he could be a champion. None of it will ever rival that. It just won't. Now, I don't believe Alexander Volkanovski is washed by any means. But what I do believe is he took 2 extremely bad knockout finishes back to back and relatively close together. Now, one of them was on short notice against the pound for pound best right now, best in the sport, Islam Makhachev. So, that is what it is. The second was in a possible pound for pound best. The current champion, who will no longer be the champion once these 2 men enter the octagon and the bell sounds on Saturday, Ilia Topuria. The thing is, man, is what we do know about the sport of mixed martial arts. No matter how strong your chin has been your entire career, once that chin gets tested, once that chin starts to get moved, once you and your chin are headed down a road of divorce, you know what I'm saying? Maybe you stayed out a little bit too late, going to the clubs. If you're a bar frequenter, you're going to the bars. Maybe that side piece approached you, said a few little pleasantries in your ear. The next thing you know, you're going down a horrible, rocky road of divorce with your chin. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's where Alexander Volkanovski is at. But what I am saying is, we just saw Israel Adesanya get his chin checked again. And it seemed relatively easy. Nasruddin went out there and checked his chin. Earlier in Izzy's career, that chin was rock solid. Him and his chin were married, and they was going to stay together for the rest of their life. That's not the case any longer. So who's to say Alexander Volkanovski won't be dealing with that? When I look at these 2 fighters, in my opinion, what you're really looking at, and I believe that this is what is going to go down on Saturday, if you couldn't tell already, I am picking Diego Lopes to go out there on Saturday night and to win the featherweight championship of the world. I'm picking him by submission over Alexander Volkanovski. And what I see occurring on Saturday night, when you look at Diego Lopes is like a cobra. He strikes quickly, he strikes fast, he delivers his venom, and his opponents are out of there. Diego Lopes is the type of a fighter when he sees a submission opening. Maybe not so much a striking opening, but a submission opening. Very similar to Brian Ortega, but you have to think Diego Lopes is not washed like Brian Ortega, right? when Diego Lopes sees a submission opening, maybe via club and sub, maybe he knocks Alexander Volkanovski down, rattles him back up against the fence, you know what I'm saying? Wobbles him for just a moment. What I see from Diego Lopes is when he sees a split second in which he can clamp on some sort of a submission, he does not hesitate. He does not wait a second or a fraction of a second to take that moment. You see a lot of fighters in their career, there's a hesitation. As you're watching the fight, you're saying, you're screaming at the TV, that was it, that was the time, that was the moment. But they don't pull that trigger quick enough, and they don't realize that moment. And the next thing you know, the fight is, they're deep into the third round, deep into the fifth round, and you can tell that they're about to lose by decision. And if the commentator happens to remember or whatever, it gets brought up that, maybe he shouldn't have let him off the hook, or maybe when that moment happened, he should have seized it. Diego Lopes is that fighter that will seize that moment. In my opinion, I think at some point during this fight, he will wobble Alexander Volkanovski. I think he clips him. I think he catches him. He wobbles him. And I don't necessarily think he finishes him by strikes, but I think he will use that moment to cinch up what he needs to cinch up. And he will either tap Alexander Volkanovski or Volko will go out. This could also happen standing. Diego Lopes is not against taking a man's back while he's standing. I just see Alexander Volkanovski getting hit or getting clipped by a shot, being wobbled, going down, or falling back up against the fence, and Diego then seizing his neck and taking it home with him along with the championship. That's just what I see happening. Alexander Volkanovski, what he's going to need to do in this fight is he needs to keep Lopes off his foot, off his front foot. He needs to keep Lopes from getting set in his offense. Once Lopes is set and he can set up his strikes to eventually lead to the submission that he's looking for, it's only a matter of time in most Diego Lopes fights. You know what I'm saying? Or it's only a matter of time before he clips you and he'll finish you with strikes. But I see this being more of a strike into a submission. Volkanovski will have to keep him guessing. He'll have to keep him off the front foot, preferably keep him on the back foot. And if I was Alexander Volkanovski, Volkanovski has really good top pressure. He has really good top game. And I know we're talking about Diego Lopes, who is, of course, black belt, no slouch on the ground. I think Volkanovski, the longer he stays on the feet, the more he's going to be prone to getting clipped and losing by submission. I think Volkanovski needs to try to get this fight to the ground. I think he can try his hand at the feet, on the feet, but I think he needs to get this to the ground. Try to get some sort of a 3/4 mount, side control, anything like that on Diego Lopes. Stay away from the powerful legs. Stay away from getting cinched up in a triangle, but to utilize some of that world-class Volkanovski ground and pound. I don't think he finishes Diego Lopes like that right away, but if he can keep him at bay, throw him off of his game plan, I think you could definitely see Alexander regain the championship. But in my opinion, Diego Lopes will go out there. He will finish Alexander Volkanovski via submission. I think he clips him. I think while Volk is off balance, backs up against the cage, or heaven forbid if he falls to the ground, I think Diego snatches his neck either way and becomes a featherweight champion of the world. Now, let's move on from this. Let's move on to the co-main event where we have Paddy Pimblett stepping in the octagon with Iron Michael Chandler. This is a really interesting fight as well because 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Paddy Pimblett was looking rough. It was looking bad. He was looking like a fighter with nothing but hype. You know, he was going out there and he should have lost to Jared Gordon. You know what I'm saying? That's where he was at. And that's no shade to Jared Gordon. But the fanfare that the UFC gave Paddy Pimblett, he should have went out there and washed almost every one of his contenders. Or fighters, opponents, I should say. He didn't look the best against Tony Ferguson. I mean, he eventually beat Tony, but I mean, come on, bro. You should have got Tony out of there a lot faster than that. He looked tremendous against Bobby Green, but Bobby Green hasn't looked good as of late, and I feel sad about that because I'm a Bobby Green fan. But Paddy Pimblett has improved far more than I ever think any of us saw him improving. And he's become a pretty well-rounded fighter. And then he's going in there with what I would classify as action fighter. Action for the Czech fighter, Iron Michael Chandler. So you got Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler, at the end of the day, what you're going to say about Michael Chandler's career is he set himself out of his prime. He was already a little bit older when he entered the UFC. You know, his prime probably, honestly, was in Bellator. So he entered in the UFC a little bit out of his prime. But if he was ever able to regain that prime in the UFC, his time setting out, trying to get a Conor McGregor fight, he wasted his prime. And now I look at him as an action fighter. He's a big name within the UFC that they can throw out there at any time, and it's gonna make news. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna make waves. You know what I'm saying, in the MMA ocean every time Michael Chandler fights, because you know you're gonna see something crazy. You're watching this fight with him and Charles Oliveira, Charlie Olives. It seems to be pretty boring, and you knew Charles Oliveira was gonna win, and then randomly in the 5th round, Michael Chandler starts jumping up and down with Oliveira on his back and slamming him down to the ground backwards. You know what I'm saying? Oliveira's on his back. Michael Chandler stands up, boom, falls on his back. Michael Chandler gets back to his feet, stands up, boom, falls back again. He's an action fighter. He's a fighter that gets paid extremely well just to grace the octagon, but not to win. Dare I say it, Michael Chandler probably by this point is probably on a contract in which he probably doesn't even get a win bonus. He probably just gets one flat rate to fight at in the UFC because he's the UFC's boy. He's Uncle Dana's boy. And by now he's bound to have re-upped his contract easily once, maybe twice. You know what I'm saying? And anytime you take a lot of short notice fights or you show the UFC you can be penciled in to a lot of areas, they'll take care of you on the financial side. So at this point, I think Michael Chandler has businesses outside the octagon as well. You know, I believe he's trying to start, or he's already started a podcast outside the UFC. Michael Chandler's out here to make the headlines. You know what I'm saying? He's out here to make the waves in the MMA pool, but he's not necessarily out here, even though he'll say he is. He's not out here to necessarily win every fight, and he's not out here to try to make a run for the championship. I think he's an intelligent enough man to see that those days are over. So what happens when he steps in there with Paddy Pimblett? Has he progressed good enough? Is he good enough to go out there and defeat Chandler? Chandler's a good wrestler. However, he rarely utilizes it in a way that puts him in the driver's seat of any fight. Chandler can crack. He's got power. He can lay a guy out easily. You know what I'm saying? Send you to nappy nunu time. No big deal for Chandler. But he rarely fights in a style to utilize that best attribute. So if he's not going to wrestle, which he's extremely good at, which is what he used to dominate everyone in over in Bellator. I know it's Bellator, but he was still dominating. If he's not going to put himself in the best position to land that devastating right hand and defeat an opponent, what's Chandler going to do other than go out there, let Paddy Pimblett, for the most part, in a Pimblett way, he's not going to dominate him. Paddy doesn't dominate just anybody. But Paddy goes out there and he plays his own game. And the way I see this fight going is I see Michael Chandler going out there having a pretty good first round. And then I think in the second round, whatever game plan Pimblett is going to utilize, it begins in the second round. And I think from there, Pimblett has his way with Michael Chandler. Has his way with him. And Michael Chandler will do Michael Chandler things. At some point, he's going to do some tremendous, powerful move. Like, at some point, when Pimblett tries to take his back, maybe he stands up and slams Pimblett off of him. Or maybe he secures a major takedown, but before, he holds Pimblett up in the air and then slams him down to the ground to get the fans into it. But outside of that, I think Pimblett wins this fight. And I see him also winning by submission over Michael Chandler. I see him winning by submission over Michael Chandler. I don't think this one's going to go to the scorecards. If it does, I got Paddy by decision. But I have a feeling that Paddy the Baddy goes out there and he chokes out Michael Chandler. I think Michael Chandler, once again, will have a good first round, and he'll have a powerful moment in a later round where it'll get all the fans out of their seat, and they'll be jumping up and down, oh, Michael Chandler. They're going to go crazy for a split second, and then Paddy will calm it down and go back to working his game plan. And I think eventually he snatches the neck of Michael Chandler, chokes him out, and that's all she wrote. That's what I see happening in the main and co-main event. I got Diego Lopes to be your new featherweight champion of the world, and I got Paddy Pimblett going out there and defeating Michael Chandler. We'll see how all this plays out. Let me know. Please let me know, because you're going to help me on my picks. Your boy is on here. We betting on Underdog Fantasy, and we betting on DraftKings. That's what we working with this week. Let me know in the comments. Do you got Alexander Volkanovski or do you got Diego Lopes? Remember, this channel is called Matter Fact. That means, is it Matt or is it fact? You let me know who wins the main event and who wins Paddy versus Michael Chandler. Because I'm betting and I need some picks. But that's how I see it. I got Lopes and I got Paddy. Nevertheless, I appreciate you guys for checking out these videos. Please like, subscribe, comment. Let me know who you think wins in the main and the co-main event of UFC 314. I'll be right back with you with some more content. We got plenty of other fights that we're going to be breaking down on this card. And once again, I do want to thank you guys for joining me for another episode of Matter Fact MMA. And I check you next time. Peace.